What's up, guys, and welcome to another first look at Planet Coaster Console Edition. In this video, we're going to be talking about their new Create tab, which is very specific to Planet Coaster Console Edition and was not included in the PC version. But if you guys want to skip ahead to the next video where we're going to be covering staff and all things related to them, go ahead and click just over here and it'll take you right to it. So to get to the new Create tab, all you have to do is hit RB or LB on your controller and it'll take you over to it. As I mentioned in the previous video where I covered scenery, this is quite literally every single item that you could possibly place down in your park in one place. If you're trying to create your own custom building, you can go over here to the building category. You could go down to walls, and just for the sake of this video, let's go ahead and build just a really simple structure so I can kind of walk you guys through that. So anything in this interface right here that has those sort of grid lines just behind the object, those are going to be items that can only be placed down in a grid system. For example, some of the more decorational items that you can use don't have that, and so they can be placed anywhere. But back to the walls, we're going to go ahead and place this C block wall right here. You can see since it's the first wall in this new blueprint that we're going to be creating, we can place it down wherever we want, but as soon as we do that, you can see we now have this grid system that we have to work in, or again, those objects that use the grid system. But what we can do here is rotate these things around using RB and LB, and we can just make a simple little box. That's all we're gonna make for right now, and there we go. Now that we have our box done, we can go back into the categories here in this interface, and we can go down to roofs. Once in the roofs tab, we have an option of doing spires. We can do roof trim, we can do pitched roofs, we can do flat roofs. I'm actually going to do a pitched roof on this one, just so I can show you guys how to use other objects as well. I'm going to go ahead and use this 1 meter ridge corrugated iron roof. Now, what we want to do here is basically put it in the center of this small little building that we made. We're going to hold X to then bump it up one grid section. We can go ahead and place that down right there. But now you're probably wondering, Toogii, how do we get rid of this gross gap in our roofline? Well, it's honestly very, very easy. What you want to do is go back to walls. Now, using the same material we used last time, which was this sort of castle C-block style wall, there should be, sometimes there isn't, but usually there should be a 1 meter gable end that you could use for a pitched roof such as this. So we're going to drop that into here, but we're going to of course have to move it up. So once again, we're going to hold X and that's going to bump it up ever so slightly. Looks like right there is exactly where we need it. Now we can do the same thing on the other side, and there you go. Now you're probably wondering, we can't get into that building. There's no doorway. Well, there can be. All we have to do is select this wall right here, and we can go ahead and delete it pressing Y. Or, sorry, PlayStation dude bro bras, I don't remember the layout for PlayStation. Whatever your top thing is, whatever your top button is. So now with that deleted, we can go back into edit the building, go into the Create tab one mo again. And now let's say we want to put a shop in this. So we can get this castle wall shop front section. We can put it right where that wall we deleted used to be. And now if we go back even more over here to the facilities, let's say we want Chief Beef in this little thing here. So now we can grab our Chief Beef facility, drop it straight inside this little building we made, and just like that, we have our own custom, very ugly, I know, it's very rushed. You can feel free to take as much time as you want making each individual thing, totally up to you, but for the most part, this is how you would go about making your own custom building. And that's really what the Create tab is all about. All of the other tabs thus far have had us press down on our right stick to essentially take us over to create our own custom things. Tabs like scenery only have blueprints. Again, there's that Create custom pressing down your right stick. But if we were in the facilities tab and we were looking through trying to find something that would work in our park and we just couldn't find something, you can just straight up click down on your right stick. It'll take you over to the Create tab. You can first select your facility, and then you can go back a little bit, go down to building, you can find some walls and create a structure around that particular facility. Now let's go through and just see what else the Create tab has to offer for us. So I'm gonna go into columns here and we'll kind of see what that's all about. So as you can see, we have a couple of different column options that don't have that sort of grid line behind the object. So With those, what you can do is basically, like I mentioned, place them anywhere, but there is also a setting that you could turn on called Move Snap that would basically snap it to a specific area, depending on where the object was when you turned that on. If you turn it off, move it ever so slightly, say we wanted a pillar for whatever reason in here-ish. Well, what I would do is use the Advanced Move tool to drag it into a position that I'm happy with initially. Once I've done that, I'd just go back to move, turn on Move Snap, and now it's going to kind of pretend like it has its own grid, but it actually doesn't. Super useful for specific builds if you guys are trying to go that route, but if you'd rather have something that utilizes the initial grid system, you can just grab something that has the grid just behind the object. Now what I'd like to show you guys is how I would go about making a station surrounding a coaster platform or something along those lines. So I'm just gonna use the normal materials that I would be using when I'm doing that. So first we're gonna start out with some concrete. Since the concrete does have a grid system to it, it's a good thing to start with so that when you start to get your pillars and things like that, you can snap them onto the surface. Okay, now that those concrete pillars are placed down, I'm gonna look through here and see if I can't find something that's similar to what I usually use. Ooh, honestly, I kind of like this, dude. That looks really nice. The base of it, as you can see, is kind of cockeyed almost. It's not exactly perfectly square, you could say, but I kind of like that. I could even hide it inside the concrete block a little bit. It kind of pokes through, but I don't think I'm gonna use this one. I wanna find one that doesn't use a grid so I can kind of show you guys what I'm talking about here. So what I'm gonna do now is turn on Snap to Position. Now what this does is basically anything that has a grid system is now going to become a point of interest, I guess you could say, for this item that doesn't use a grid system. So for example, if I come over here to this concrete pillar, it's gonna snap to the center of that. I'm gonna go ahead and place that down, but I'm not quite done yet. I'm gonna now reselect this pillar, go into the Advanced Move, and you can kind of see how the fulcrum, or I guess the rotational point of this pillar is at the very base of it. That's kind of important. So we're currently rotating along the x-axis, which is great. I'm gonna go ahead and bring this up until it's straight up and down. And you can see it is perfectly centered on this concrete pillar, which is exactly what we wanted. So now that we have it positioned where we want, I can go ahead and place it down right there. Next, I need to find something I can use at the top to essentially tie two of these columns together. And what I'm going to use for that is this wooden column, this 4-meter wooden column right here that doesn't have the same base that this other one had. Now it's important to make sure that we still have Snap to Position on, and I'm gonna put it just at the top of this concrete block. We're gonna go over to rotate it, change our axis to this green one here, our y-axis, and we're gonna rotate it around just like that. Go ahead and place it down there. Next, we're gonna go into Advanced Move, and we're actually gonna choose the y-axis again because we're gonna be bringing this block all the way up to about there. I'd say looks pretty good. Now that we've done that, we can go through and delete these other ones that we don't need. Next, we need a skinnier piece of wood that's gonna be sort of the lattice of our pergola. So I'm gonna use this plain 4-meter wooden pillar. I'm gonna again align it with the center of this concrete block on the ground. We're gonna rotate it on the z-axis so it's nice and flat, nice and horizontal here. Then we can move it on the x-axis till it's up at the top, and I like to place these just in the center of this other horizontal beam. And we're gonna move it along the z-axis. And what I'm gonna do now is just place a bunch of these right next to one another, and then we'll go through and delete the ones in between so we get nice even spacing in between each of these posts. All right, with all of those new planks or posts placed down, I'm gonna go ahead and select this really quick, and I'm actually gonna do Advanced Move and Duplicate because I need to rotate this around on the y-axis so that it's facing this direction. I'm then gonna move it on the x-axis over with the Advanced Move and line it up with this pillar here. Looks about the same as the other side. I'd say that's probably good enough. We'll go ahead and place that down. And it's at this point we're gonna be able to come through and select each little post here that we don't want. So now that we have this design sort of figured out, what we can do here is select the whole thing, but I don't wanna select these other pillars. Those were more so I could get the spacing figured out. We're gonna go ahead and confirm that selection. Because one of these items in the selection has a grid, all of the items that we've selected with that will now move in a grid as well. So if I were to simply copy that, I can now completely duplicate exactly what I made over and over and over again until I get the exact size that I'm after. Now, obviously, this design is unfinished, but just so I can give you guys an idea here, what you can do with that is basically have, let's say you want this to be your queue for your coaster. First of all, I would recommend you put this over the coaster station initially, and then bring your path from your entrance out to your standard section of path, or your main path area. Now, what I mean by that is, for this coaster, for example, I would take your path from the entrance right here and move it around that sort of pergola design, kind of twisting and turning like it is here, back to your standard main path section. Otherwise, it's not going to line up at all, and it will probably look fairly disgusting. But that is essentially the look that I go for on pretty much all of my coaster stations, is this sort of pergola look. Just because it's very easy to make. Once you sort of make this template, you can basically duplicate it over and over and over again, and it will always look the same, and it'll always be exactly what you want. Now, because I did also cover the Create tab in the Facilities video as well as the Scenery video, I don't really think there's a whole lot else that I need to say about this Create tab, aside from the fact that the only reason this exists is simply because of the button mapping Frontier had to do in order to port this game over from PC to console. But even then, I still really like it. It is kind of a pain to have to switch between tabs if you want to use a blueprint versus if you want to do something more custom, but do keep in mind that there is always the option on Facilities and Scenery to simply press down on your right stick and it'll take you to the Create tab automatically, and I think it'll do it specific to whatever tab you sort of shift from. So if we go to Facilities and again press down on our right stick, it should take us into Facilities, whereas if we were in Scenery and we press that same button, it's going to take us into more of the scenery oriented Create tab. So again, just something to keep in mind. But with that, I do think I'm going to wrap this video up here. So if you guys did enjoy, please leave a like, leave a comment, help support the dream by smashing that subscribe button, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Peace.